There was this article that I was reading in my local motorcycle newspaper. It was about this group of guys who wanted to build a road race bike using a stock CBX. To me, it sounded like a crazy idea, being that a CBX is one of the largest motorcycles ever produced, and had a reputation as being a machine that couldn't even handle its own power, let alone race on a racetrack. I could see building a drag bike using a CBX, and racing it in a straight line. But these guys were talking about building a road race bike that needs to go around corners at high rates of speed. The bike was just too big. There was no way you'll ever get all those cylinders around a corner at a high rate of speed before you run out of ground clearance and pile the thing up in a corner. But if they could pull it off, the story begins with this guy. His name is Mike Dondelinger, and he's a design engineer for a small plastics manufacturing company out of San Jose, California, and one of the most dedicated motorcyclists I have ever met. He represents the CBX Owners Association and their furthest endeavors to build a race bike using a CBX. In the daytime, you can find Mike designing all those little small plastic parts you see on cell phones, remote controls, stuff like that. But at night, this man gives the definition of precision a whole new meaning. It's a level of precision that most human beings cannot even possibly comprehend, let alone want to. But it's the magic of this wizard that will bring the dinosaurs back to life.
It was designed by Soichiro Irimajiri, who was the same engineer who designed Honda's GP bikes in the 60s. And, you know, kids that are riding bikes and getting into it now, they don't realize that at one point in time, Honda was thought of more or less as a scooter company. And it wasn't until they started winning at the Isle of Man and had a few World Road Race Championships under their belt that people started to perceive them as a motorcycle company. So it was a very, very significant event when Honda went road racing on the world circuit. And one of the machines that brought them success was their six-cylinder bike designed by Irimajiri. So that, crap, I'm trailing off here. All of a sudden, I got an AFM newsletter, and they were asking for input on a new class they were going to have called Super Dinosaur. They were going to run it as an experimental class. And it was for bikes 85 and earlier, and there were very few rules. And at that point in time, I really didn't have too much more to think about.
Changing a motorcycle that was meant for the street and redesigning it into one that runs at full throttle around a race course was the challenging task that Mike was up against. He would need to use everything he had and then some to make sure that this transformation process from street bike to race bike would be a success. First, let's take a look at a stock CBX. Now, if you were to put a scale under each tire, you'd find that the rear scale has more weight than the front. Not a good thing for a race bike that needs about a 50-50 weight balance. It's the weight on the front tire that gives the motorcycle the traction around turns. Mike would have to find some way of making this bike a more balanced machine if this Super Dinosaur were ever going to succeed at the racetrack. Mike explained to me that there were many ways to change the weight balance of a motorcycle, but it sure wasn't going to be as easy as just tying a couple of bricks to the handlebars. He began by scavenging up a used rear swing arm. It weighed about the same, but was 2 inches longer than the stock swing arm. Next, he stuck on a highly modified lighter rear wheel that he assembled himself with a custom-designed cush drive and a lighter chain, and now the rear wheel weighed almost 20 pounds less. Soon the graveyard was calling again. No, the junkyard, because that's where he found the shorter fuel tank that would not only move the weight of the fuel further forward, but now the weight of the rider could also be moved further forward. Soon the weight balance problem was just about fixed. Then it was time to work on the cornering clearance.
Crank cover for a CBX motorcycle. Now, when we went to the track, we found our problem was cornering clearance. Big surprise, right? We knew we were going to run into that right away, but we thought we were up against a limitation with the downslope angle on the swing arm. What we were able to do is drop that swing arm a little bit more and get ourselves about a ½ an inch extra ride height at the rear axle. Well, in order to maintain the same geometry, that means we needed to bring the front end up a like amount. Well, the easiest way to do that on the CBX is to drop the fork tubes, because the stock handlebars are mounted on a portion of the fork that's above the top triple clamp. So you got a lot of real estate to work with up here. So we just brought the forks down and got new bars that mounted underneath the top triple clamp. The only problem with that is now you're increasing the distance from the bottom of the lower clamp, bottom of the lower triple clamp to the front axle, and that makes the fork longer and weaker, and it bends more and it twists more. So to get around that, I designed a new lower clamp that's much thicker in section. The new clamp turned out to be almost exactly 10 times stronger than the original clamp. Now, it's not that the clamp that we made is that strong. I mean, yes, it's a very strong clamp, but the real problem is that the CBX clamp is so weak.